This is less a reply than an addition to my 2 cents race idea meritocracy, a lesson from Genghis Khan. It is an addition insofar as that I see nothing to dispute in his video, but some stuff to add. After all, my 2 cents is a small YouTuber such as myself, and I recommend you to check out his videos. From what I have seen so far, his use of sources is absolutely excellent. He talks a bit slow, but I guess this is entirely a matter of taste. I also want to thank Mr. Dapperton once again, because he's one of the few who promotes smaller YouTubers very actively, and I won't have found 2 cents without his promotion. Thanks, man. So what about this video? Well, he pretty much debunks the old right on race from a right point of view, with kind of left-leaning arguments such as class divides us more than race. And yeah, I know ideas don't have sides and colors, but it is a left-leaning argument. Which is something I like, since I do more or less the same thing but mirrored. I attack left-leaning ideas from a left position with right-winged arguments, and I have got the feeling that we end up in a quite similar position doing that, which suggests that we are both onto something. So if you have seen my videos about race, you know that there are some things that I see as very important. One of this is that there is no measurement for race. Secondly is that we don't know how much we can counter genetic prepositions with training, nurture and so on. In the case of body height, it seems we can't do a lot. If your parents are small, you won't be a giant. But in case of intelligence, it looks like we are also far beyond our genetic limits that someone with a lesser potential can outsmart someone with a higher potential if the first is proper trained and the other is not. So I would agree that race has a factor, since I firmly believe in the idea that we are just animals and bound to the law of nature, and evolution is one of that. If your brain has a certain limitation which might result from genetics or an accident, it can be an accident, you can't do a lot against that. I mean, I have a friend who had an accident as a child. The result was severe brain damage, which limits him. He got all the help, all the nurture, all the training, because his family is wealthy, intelligent and well educated. But it looked at some point he hit the ceiling, and no matter how much he trained and tried, he stuck there, with no fault of his own or someone else. Nature is a bitch, and the brain is just a machine. It's just part of our body. It is not magical. And as a final point, I have to bring up intelligence itself. In our Western society, intelligence is the major attribute. Anything revolves around that. But in most of history and in most of places on Earth, to this very day, it's not that important. It seems nobody has a problem with pointing out average strength, average muscle density, height, or the ability to reflect light with their skin. We accept these as biological traits, but if it comes to intelligence, people get crazy. I think this has something to do with the notion that intelligence is somehow divine, magical, or in other way supernatural, which it is not. 2 cents brings up several great examples. First is Korea. If race determination was true, North and South Korea would look pretty much the same, and it does not. Furthermore, I agree to his statement that pride on race or nation or gender is a reflection on the fact that you have absolutely nothing to be proud of that you have done. In other words, be proud if you made a decent meal because it's your work, but don't be proud on your nation's war victories from 1,000 years ago, because you had nothing to do with that. The only thing I have to point out is that 2 cents always falls in the trap of physics envy. You see, in physics, the only true science, by the way, next to mathematics of course, you formulate a theory and falsify once. The theory is done. It's over when it is falsified once. That's the scientific method, and it works pretty fine in physics, even though it leads to a world where we argue not about true and false anymore in science, but about probability. You see, to say that a statue don't waves its hand is right for a human lifetime, but it's not absolutely right in the time span of, let's say, 10 billion years. The same is true with dropping your pencil. It will fall down most of the time. Sometimes it just disappears and relocates to Mars. The thing is, it's complicated even in physics, where things behave in a way that is highly predictable. Add life forms to this and things become, let's say, less predictable, and add intelligence to it and you've got a mess. Add humans to it and a lot of your predictions fall just out of the window, because it seems that with higher intelligence the predictability of a thing goes absolutely down. I mean, order the following things by intelligence and predictability: stone, ant, cat, human. Do you see my point? You simply can't apply the scientific method to things that involves human interaction. Nobody is more enraged by this fact than me. Believe me. I guess we simply lack the intelligence to understand our own intelligence, which would be not all too unexpected. You can't understand a system as long as you are in the system. Math geeks will know that as Gödel's incompletion theory. The core is that you have to go one level up to understand the stuff below. A future intelligence machine might figure us out, but I guess we ourselves we can't. What we do is pretty much follow our nature. In the past, the clever were beaten by the strong. Now the strong gets beaten by the clever. That's evolution. The goal of life is not to become more clever, but to adopt to the surroundings. If we keep our surroundings challenging, like going into space for example, we will evolve and change to whatever we have to become to prevail there. And there is one last truth that fits perfectly to Genghis Khan. Temujin had a lot of kids. All that you are will be lost if you don't have kids. Don't kid yourself. It does not matter how many books you write. It does not matter how many subscribers you have on YouTube. Most of you that prevails over the centuries that come are your best genes in your kids. So, some last words to Temujin. He was born a noble, grew up poor and became a self-made leader. He also had a quite flexible idea of honor. Temujin became Genghis Khan because he did what has to be done when it had to be done. Because if he had not done it, he would have died. His Mongolian empire was what it was because he struggled and he prevailed where weaker men did not. And it did fall shortly after his death because rich brats took over. The best leaders of men in history were those who had no power before raising to power. Struggle in your youth is a good thing. Seek it. Fight. Doubt authority. Challenge it and be ready to accept it in the case that they prove themselves to you. This makes you a leader of men. A world without struggle is a world that falls into decadence, which is pretty much the West nowadays. Race is not really an issue. Right. Class is to a certain degree, but those who get up one step or two, that's the ones to look to, because they are able and they know how to progress within our society, within our world. With certain limits, as pointed out in the Peter Principle, of course. Link is in the upper right corner. But, and that's the important thing, if one does anything right, he is still able to lose in a human society. That's the thing to remember. We are not stones. We follow not simple logic. Human societies cannot be understood by humans. Don't fall into the trap of trying to apply physics standards to human beings. No theory a human mind will ever create will explain his own behavior. You can't understand your own behavior fully, and you can't understand the behavior of your neighbor fully. Sometimes it's better to accept that we don't know and make the best out of the tools we have. The best tool we have right now seems to be culture, and it pains me to say that, but perhaps it's time to move back from logic a bit to the struggles of cultures. Thanks for listening. Like, share, subscribe. Remember checking out 2 cents, and as always, have a great time.